light within my heart, light within my thoughts, light within my words. May one and all and everything, blessed and loved, ever be. Welcome. I am Sister Who. Someone put forth to me the other day that compromises are necessary. And I tried to convey what I've learned about the word compromise over the few decades of my life. And I'm not sure he understood, but I guess that's why it makes sense to address it within an episode. And I still won't say everything there is to be said about the word, and everyone will continue to interpret it each in his or her own way, and that's fine. I just think there is a greater awareness that needs to be brought to the discussion. So often when I hear people say we have to compromise, what they're talking about is settling for what's called a lose-lose situation. At one time, maybe still, popular psychology was talking about win-win situations or win-lose situations or lose-win situations, that when we encounter conflict between two people, or when conflict happens between two people, that they can arrive at a solution where they both get what they want, and that's called a win-win situation, or only one person gets what they want, and that's called a win-lose situation, or neither person gets what they want, and that's a lose-lose situation. I have found that most of the time when I hear people use the word compromise, what they're proposing is a lose-lose situation. Essentially saying, I will give up something I want, but in return, you must give up something you want. And what I try to point out to them is that if they persevere a little bit longer and are a little more patient and engage in a little more dialogue so that they can understand what's really important to each other, it is possible to find more win-win situations. If compromise means I don't get what I want but neither do you, we're still keeping score and butting heads and ensuring a world where no one is truly happy. If instead we set aside time for dialogue and we say, okay, what is it about your solution that is most important to you? And when you have truly attentively listened, and listening attentively means that while the person is talking, you don't think about what you're going to say next. You listen to every word until they get to the end of their question, the end of their sentence, and then you pause to compose your response at that point, but you don't compose your response while they're still asking the question or while they're still describing their experience, because that takes your attention away from truly hearing what they're saying. It's a kind of active listening, I think one person called it. So by having this dialogue, and they begin to understand why your solution is important to you, and you begin to understand why their solution is important to them, and then suddenly someone might say, oh, you know what would be the perfect solution in this situation where we can both get what we want? It's this. And I didn't think of it until just now, but this thing that has just popped into my mind would answer all of your concerns as well as all of mine. And if at that point the other person has felt genuinely heard, like they know that you have been truly, honestly listening to them, that can make you teammates and collaborators to where you're now both headed in the same direction and you're going to accomplish it with twice the strength that either of you had, instead of either one of you trying to accomplish this all on your own. In a similar note, I've sometimes heard the phrase, let's agree to disagree. And I'm afraid when people say that sometimes, they're not really agreeing to disagree. They're not engaging in mutual respect of you have your opinion and I have mine, and I respect your opinion completely. When they say, let's agree to disagree, all they're really saying is, let's stop arguing. I don't know if it's wise to stop arguing until the argument is resolved, which is where sometimes I can be a little irritating to people, I suppose, when I want to pursue an argument to a positive conclusion. I want to make there be a happy ending. And in some cases, people would say, but you can't always have a happy ending. I guess my response to that would be, it depends on how much time you have. If, again, we go back to the dialogue and saying, this is what I understand and why, and this is what I've experienced, and this is how I came to my conclusions, and the more we understand each other, the more we're able to love each other, and the more we're able to respect each other. And that's where I think the win-win situations become possible again. But if there is any impatience, if there is simply not available time, we can't do it now. We're having a discussion in an airport, and my flight is boarding and I need to go. Well, here's my card, send me an email and we'll talk by phone later. I mean, there are ways of working around that. But the question is whether you value the other person enough to invest the time and energy to invite that person by that participation to become one of your teammates as you continue to journey through life, to become one of the people who's helping to support you and you're helping to support them. And it's all very collaborative and egalitarian. It's not either one of you saying, I'm the teacher and you're the student and you're going to do it my way and I'm the one who's right. And people joke about this, but I don't know if it really should be joked about, because then it encourages people to take it a little too lightly. When we're agreeing to disagree, ideally it's recognizing that the other person has different experiences and different perspectives that have resulted in a different conclusion. And that because one has the perspective and experiences that one does, one cannot embrace the same conclusion. So it's recognizing a difference, but it's not so much about agreeing or disagreeing as it is about embracing the diversity that life on earth includes. The thing to remember within every potential conflict, well, I don't know if that's even a legitimate thing to say, because a lot of times when we say things, we forget that there may be someone in the room with a completely different opinion. And because they have a different opinion, they're not going to hear what we say in the way that we intended. They're not going to hear it in the way that we be collaborative and uplifting. They may find it discouraging. Someone may say, well, now that you have nothing, you have no attachments, you're totally free. And the other person may interpret that as a failure and a disaster, because all they're seeing at that moment is the experience of loss. And knowing that they need certain resources in order to continue, and if they don't get those resources, they can't continue. The fact that they are totally free to continue just without resources, it may leave them with the challenge of rewriting and reconfiguring and reshaping their whole life, because that's a lot of work to do. It could be ultimately good, but in the short term, it's a whole lot of work. On one hand, I don't ever want to be accused of being lazy, but on the other hand, I'm not a glutton for punishment either. I don't want to seek out the hardest way to do everything, because life is hard enough without me adding to it. I don't seek to disagree because I want to debate. I'm really not a debate-oriented person. I like collaboration and teamwork and love and wisdom and sharing. I don't like butting heads, metaphorically speaking, with other people. I don't like arguing about things or debating things. I once joked with a friend who was attending a Unitarian Universalist fellowship with me once each Sunday, that for those of you who are familiar with the Unitarians, perhaps you'll get a giggle out of this. I told him, if you want to make sure that everyone in the congregation attends, just put up an advertising poster that announces there will be a heated debate about such and such, and everybody will come. because they seem to thrive on debate and butting heads intellectually over things and citing their sources and comparing his sources to her sources, and then we get into the academic area of source criticism. Is that a legitimate source, or is it not a legitimate source, and if so, why? I'm not interested in all that. I'm interested in people speaking in ways that they understand each other so that our love for one another can grow and our teamwork and collaboration can grow and things can become possible that no single individual could do all by him or herself. I guess very closely aligned with all this, going back to the word compromise, there's also an important distinction to be made between compromise and integration. Compromise, to me, has become a word that people use when they want me to give up something that really wouldn't be smart for me to give up. Some characteristic of my very soul, that if I were to give that up, I wouldn't be who I am. There were a number of problems that came into my life specifically because I was willing to help someone that someone else felt should not be helped, whom someone else felt should not be helped. And because I helped that person, the other person began looking for ways to make trouble for me because they didn't want this person with whom they had a disagreement to be supported in any way. And I found myself thinking weeks later, when all these problems are coming into my life, if I had just not helped that person, none of this would have happened. And that may be true, but I wouldn't be who I am if I hadn't helped that person. It would be an attack on my very character, on my very soul, to say that I cannot be kind, I cannot be generous, I cannot help someone because it may get me in trouble. I cannot stand up for someone, I cannot speak out for someone because it may get me in trouble. And it might. And there have been numerous times where people chose to speak up and to stand up and got arrested at a demonstration by law enforcement personnel that, in my opinion, were acting inappropriately, but there are various opinions on that I'm sure could debate all day long. And I'm not interested in debate, as I said. To me, it makes sense that we go back to law enforcement and political offices specifically being viewed as public service. But going back to our original discussion of, is it compromise or is it integration? In integration, you're not giving up anything you can't afford to lose. You're not giving up anything you can't live without. You're integrating what you believe and the things you care about and the resources you have with those that another person has. And essentially, integration is about teamwork. Integration is about teamwork. It's not about being assimilated, where you leave behind everything that doesn't fit into somebody else's scheme. And of course, later they would probably ask, do you still have whatever it was, because we need that now? And you'll say, no, I got rid of it because you told me to. In integrating, we're noticing what is true and real and good and beautiful within the other person, and we're providing opportunity for it and support for it. In compromise, we're cutting off our fingertips because they don't fit into the gloves that we were given to wear. Rather morbid kind of metaphor to use, I suppose, but I think it really is that severe of an injury to inflict on someone, to ask him or her to be less than that person is in order to fit into a scheme that isn't really looking out for them anyway. I think a big reason that everyone supported life within a tribal society so much is because their own survival depended upon it as well. It was a symbiotic relationship. It was a both and. It wasn't an either or. I want both you and me to survive. That sort of embrace, if you will. The thing that I guess inspired this whole discussion with the other person kind of comes back to this question of a marginalized population being integrated into a predominant one. If we ever reach a time where gay and lesbian and transgender people are so thoroughly accepted and supported and loved that there is no need for gay, lesbian, or transgender organizations anymore. Most people with whom I've talked don't believe that such a time will ever come because there is so much work to do. I suppose that's analogous to saying, will there ever be a day without racism of any sort? Because there is so much work to do and we have so far to go. I don't know if there will be or not. I'm not holding my breath that I'll be alive to see it. I think it'll take longer than my lifetime, but all that being said, it doesn't make sense to aim for anything less or anything else. It's something that we need to keep working toward no matter how long it takes. In the distinction that I often bridge over into from this discussion we've been having about compromise and integration, very close to that is the distinctions between integration and assimilation. Assimilation on the surface looks like acceptance. No one's harassing you anymore as long as you assimilate and look like everyone else. As long as you're normal, there's no crime. You may even have the same laws. Gays and lesbians can marry, but the danger I find in that is that it comes way too close to essentially rebuilding what's called the closet. Before it was acceptable to be gay or lesbian in public, it was described as being in the closet, from the old adage of having skeletons in your closet. And because it was based, that witticism is based on, and that witticism and its association with gay and lesbian people is based on the assumption that there's something wrong with being gay or lesbian. And consequently, to come out of the closet means dealing with the shame of being gay or lesbian, except that ideally there is no shame in it. But as long as people are not accepting, there may be someone who wants it hidden in order to make those people more comfortable. Well, I don't know that we should ever make bigotry comfortable. I don't know that we should ever make homophobia comfortable. Those are pathologies. Those are psychological and sociological sicknesses, things that keep good things from happening, things that are ultimately destructive if they are practiced long enough and intensely enough. In being integrated, the community says to the gay or lesbian person, what can you contribute? What are your aptitudes? What are your strengths? What are your abilities? Whether it's the gay or lesbian person or the person with a disability or the person with of a particular race, that society turns to that person and says, so who are you? What can you contribute? What do we need to understand about you and your sensitivities and your needs and so forth? That leads to integration. In assimilation, society basically says we don't care. We want you to essentially go back into the closet. We want you to make this a very, very private matter that we never have to look at, never have to deal with, never have to recognize in any way, shape, or form. Which would be fine, except that there are a whole lot of areas of life that you can't embrace and activities that you can't do without addressing the disparities. It's like, why, when a gay and lesbian couple can get married, that means if one of them gets in a car accident and is laying in an intensive care unit of a hospital, they aren't barred from entering the room because the spouse is not actually biologically family. And so they go to, and all they can do is look through the glass and watch their life partner die without being able to hold his hand because they're not biologically considered family to this person who is fighting for life. That's the sort of problem that assimilation encourages, or that tolerates it, that it enables. In going for integration, it is perfectly legitimate to say that if it's a rule for you, it's also a rule for me. We don't have any double standards are the problem. There are to be no double standards. Considering how many people have fought and died and suffered to deliver gays and lesbians from the closet, it seems unfathomable to me, just totally incredible, that there would be any movement to rebuild the closet. But that's essentially what assimilation is doing. As Sister Who, I keep coming back to the line, a person is a person is a person, but I really do believe it. No one should ever have to apologize for who or what he or she is. No one should ever have to live a life that is not their own. No one should be confined to even a gilded birdcage, as they say. Society setting up an apartheid-like construction to say that you will live within these parameters and only within these parameters, and if you're ever outside of those parameters, we will arrest you and torment you and whatever. In integration, we recognize that this is a beautiful and valuable person, and that whether it's someone else or ourselves, the time has come to grow and to embrace a broader, deeper, richer kind of empowering love, and not be content with, well, essentially doing without. Somebody suggested to me once that there were things you can't say on television, or that you have to censor the speech. And I have something about censorship always makes me nervous, because it seems to me that there's truth and there's helpful information that may be getting censored for hidden agendas and for ulterior motives. And so I do my best to never interfere with expressing something, but that doesn't take away the need to be tactful. It's like one person advised me, mean what you say what you mean, but don't say it mean. There are tactful ways of communicating even the most difficult insights or concerns. There are tactful ways of choosing words to undo the camouflage by which some valuable contributions are being hidden rather than shared, because the people hiding them don't agree that those things should be shared. The added area in all of this is that sometimes I feel strong enough to be someplace and give, and sometimes I don't. Sometimes I'm exhausted and I'm weak, and I need to respect that. In going hiking up the mountains, someone advised me once, way back at the beginning when I was just starting to do hikes, they advised me that you have to be extra careful coming down a mountain because all your muscles are tired, and that's when the knee injuries especially start, because you may not be burning as many calories because you're not pushing yourself uphill. You still have to be careful, because if you misstep or your weary muscles don't hold you up enough, you could fall and injure one of those knees or sprain an ankle or any number of things. I think everyone needs to be flexible in most superficial areas of their life. I think we should be flexible within our deep inner foundational issues and concerns and values only when sufficient education or development has happened. But there are a few other times additionally where being helpful is just not something that is well served within that circumstance. When we love someone, we want to find win-win solutions. When we see each other as competitors, that's when compromise and lose-lose situations become infinitely more probable. And now may you be blessed in the pursuit of your own dreams and in all your dealings with the diversity of humanity around you. Amen. Thank you for watching.